Greyhounds, good evening. This is Eileen Heatler. I'm the Director of Career Connections. I want to welcome you to our Loyola Connect Live tonight. We have from the class of 2013, Jake McIntyre joining us. I'm going to hold off on sharing Jake's location tonight because I think it's way more fun coming from him. So I'll let him include that when he greets everyone. Like I said, Jake is a Greyhound 2013. He had a finance degree. He has a finance degree from Loyola. And when he first graduated from Loyola, he was part of a startup group. I'm going to let him give you some more details about that. And then he went to a little place called Facebook. Maybe you've heard of it. And he spent 5 years at Facebook. And we have some questions for him about that tonight. And then something churned inside him. We're going to ask him what that was. And now he is the founder of WineKey. And we're going to hear a little bit more about that tonight. So again, if you could just hold your questions for a little bit, we'll go through some questions we have prepared for Jake. Thrilled to have everyone. And Jake, you are now in the presence of some Greyhounds. Welcome back.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Eileen and team. I'm super excited to be here.
That's great. So I did high level at best. Could you just share with our group tonight a little bit more about all things Jake, from either, maybe even what brought you to Loyola, and then maybe a little bit about your time at Loyola, and then kind of fast forward to your time after Loyola and what you're doing now.
Yeah, of course. So obviously I came to Loyola. I actually ended up playing a sport my first 2 years at Loyola. And so I lived that athletic life. And then my last 2 years, I lived kind of like the regular student life. So I kind of got the best of both worlds. But while at Loyola, like Eileen mentioned, I studied finance. My freshman year, I didn't really know kind of what was going on or what I was too interested in, but ultimately chose finance because my dad was in it. A lot of my other friends were in it. And I was kind of just like curious in terms of, how companies work, the stock market, as well as just other aspects of wealth management. So during Loyola, my junior year, I actually got an internship at Legg Mason. And that was through another Loyola alumni, Joe Carrier, where I was in their credit risk department. And what I learned from that experience, looking back on that now, is that I don't know necessarily if finance was my path and something that I really wanted to go into, and to, really spend my career and life doing. So after Loyola, upon graduation, I went back to New York, moved immediately into New York City. And before I was at a startup, Eileen, I actually worked for CBS Radio selling AM radio. So if you know WCBS 880, 1010 WINS, or WFAN, I was selling airspace on that. That was...
We got to hear about that.
Yeah, 2013, 2014. So pretty wild, but looking back on it, probably the most valuable thing from that was learning how to sell. It's extremely difficult to sell airspace, especially in a digital age, and understanding in all aspects of life, whether it be you move to be an accountant or into finance, or you're a writer or entrepreneur, you need to learn how to sell in some capacity. So that was really valuable. So I was at CBS, super corporate world. From there, I became the first employee at a telemedicine startup, so called SkyMD. So essentially, we worked with a bunch of dermatologists, and we connected with patients where you would essentially have a video call or take a picture of a rash or whatever your condition might be. And through the platform, you'd connect with the dermatologist, and they would be able to help diagnose the issue, and then prescribe you or also refer you to another doctor if you needed to go in. That was really cool in the sense that that was my first real experience in a startup, and kind of where I fell in love with it, and knew this was something that I really wanted to do and really interested in. I worked on everything from sales and marketing to customer service to product, kind of you name it, just a jack of all trades there. And then after about a year, I actually moved down to Austin, Texas, and started working at Facebook on a relatively new team there, their small and medium-sized business team as an account manager. And down there, I worked with about 30 to 40 clients on a quarterly basis, managing their Facebook spend. And what was really, really cool and interesting about that is that I had an opportunity to work with other CEOs, who were just starting out on their business and using Facebook to grow their business. So one of the clients I got to work with, I'm not sure if you're familiar, is Halo Top Ice Cream. So I started working with them when no one knew of them. And this was, I think, beginning of 2016, maybe. They, just launched, they had some really good initial traction. And then, by the time I stopped working with them and moved back to New York to work at another job at Facebook, they were considered a unicorn. So it was really cool in that experience, in the sense that I got to work with the CEO and the upper level executives because Facebook was a really valuable and important driver of their business. And so I got to learn the ins and outs. I also got to learn what else they were doing because I was just super curious. I was able to build a really nice relationship with the team there, and they trusted me. And so we always talked and brainstormed on different strategies outside of marketing. So really built a relationship with him. And looking back, it was just super valuable to understand how he approached certain issues, how he looked at growing his business, his risk tolerance that they would take, and then also kind of their mentality, that startup mentality of kind of testing and learning, taking chances, moving really quickly, and making decisions really quickly. So I was in Austin for about 2 years. Great city. It's blowing up now. It will continue to blow up. And then I moved to New York, where I started working on the health team. And essentially I worked with Roman Health. If you guys are familiar, they're men's medication, and they're really growing and becoming really popular now as well. But it was super different because in Austin, I was working with about 30 different clients, where when I moved to New York, I worked with just one. So I had a really in-depth experience working with them, again, working really closely with their executives and watching them and how small their team was and how lean their team was, working with them on a daily basis to understand, again, how they're using Facebook to reach the audiences they want to reach, and to really grow their business. So really every step of the way that I took kind of led me to where I am now. And yeah, it's just pretty kind of incredible how, we got to where we are today.
Yeah, it's incredible. So I have a million questions, but I want to start with one we commonly get from students, and I'm optimistic that the students are wondering this. When it comes to a large organization like Facebook, we get students who ask us questions, say about Facebook, Google, Apple, pick one of those large organizations. Could you share a little bit more about how you kind of broke into that organization and advice for the group on how to do that? Should that be a goal?
Yeah. So I think I was pretty lucky, to be honest. I actually threw my hat in the ring. I knew I wanted to kind of move out of New York. I wanted to work for a big tech company. I wanted to understand tech more. And so I looked at all the FANG companies and other up and coming tech startups. So I applied to Google, LinkedIn, Facebook, a bunch of others. And ultimately, I had interviews with LinkedIn and Facebook, and ended up getting the job at Facebook. What I think really, set me apart and prepared for that, was just like my preparation and what I've done, my past experience, and building that narrative of that I was, I worked at a big corporation, so I understood like those practices and how to work. But then again, when I worked at Sky & D in a small startup, I knew how to be scrappy. I knew how to move really quickly. I could deal with ambiguity. So I kind of took all those learnings from both of those experiences and applied it to that application at Facebook. It's a little different today in the sense that obviously, like if you do know someone there, get your foot in the door because they do want referrals. They highly encourage it. And it is important. And a lot of these companies do value referrals because they are looking for a particular person that can drive the business and move really quickly and move really fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's good to know because we really do get these questions a lot. So it's good to know you're a resource for this, which is great. How about, kind of like that soul searching, when did you know it was time to leave Facebook? When did you know it was time to move on? Or, can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah. So I loved working at Facebook. It's a great company to work for. Met some really smart, intelligent people there. Learned so many different things, so many different like aspects that I never even thought of. But in the back of my head, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I pretty much referred to myself as a wantrepreneur until I actually became an entrepreneur because I knew I needed to like actually take an action. While I was working at Facebook on the side, I actually was running growth for another company called thebatch.com, which is a bachelorette party planning app. And so I got just even more startup experience from there. And ultimately, what led me to WineKey and wanting to leave Facebook was I was actually planning or helping plan a birthday party at a wine tasting out in a vineyard. And there wasn't really an easy way to book a tasting. I had to call, like who uses the phone these days, right? Like you could fill out a contact form and like half the wineries wouldn't even pick up. They didn't respond. So I thought there had to be a better way to do it. And after just doing a little bit more research, understanding kind of what the market size is, what the opportunity is, I decided to leave Facebook and start building out WineKey. We're taking a step back there. I actually started building WineKey while I was at Facebook on the nights and on the weekends. And then when it came to like we were ready to launch and we had some tastings lined up, that's when I made the move and switched full-time to WineKey.
That is so fascinating. So it literally came from an idea because you hit a roadblock in trying to book that bachelorette party.
Yeah, or the wine tasting for a birthday party.
Right. Through that. Right. Okay. So would you recommend then if folks have this wantrepreneur, I love that. I'm going to completely steal that. It's great. Would you recommend if someone does have what we'll call stability at a job like you had with Facebook, do you try and juggle both? Or do you think if you look back, are you glad you did that? Do you know others who have maybe jumped ship in a cold way? They just jumped off cold and started. Like, what's your thought on all that now that you've been through it?
Yeah, looking back, I'm super happy that I stayed with Facebook as long as I did. Again, I really did enjoy what I was doing. And also just having that stability, like having that health insurance, having a paycheck come in every 2 weeks. That was really comforting. And like knowing that, I could save up and then ultimately like when the time is right and when like it actually became really overwhelming, that's when I could actually make the move. Yeah, I mean, I would have stayed longer if I could, but when things started picking up with WineKey, I knew it was time to kind of make that switch.
Okay. And then we oftentimes get questions as well. I'd love you to comment on, did you give Facebook 2 weeks notice? Was it different because of like info security issues? Did they walk you right out? Like, what is that process like from your perspective? What did you experience?
Yeah, I gave my 2 weeks notice. Again, Facebook pretty much does want the best for you. So when I was working at the Batch and doing that on the side at Facebook, I obviously like let Facebook know. There's like a team there called the conflicts team, and pretty much you fill out a form and they make sure that there's no conflict of interest between the two, and there wasn't. So it's like all go ahead. And then when WineKey came around, pretty much the same, gave my 2 weeks. Obviously, you never really want to burn any bridges or leave on a bad note. Yeah, and then moved on from there.
Amazing. How about the name WineKey? Can you share how that came to be?
Yeah. So we wanted to like, figure something out about like opening up to an experience. Our original thought was like, what's the sound when you like pop a wine bottle? Like that little like,
Wait, what is it again?
I don't know. It was like, boop. I can't, I can't pronounce it correctly, but
I'm just giving you a hard time.
yeah, it ended up like being nothing interesting at all when you look it up. Um, but one of my friends who's a designer, we were thinking and brainstorming through it, and ultimately like we settled on WineKey, and then he built and designed the logo to it, which I thought was pretty cool. It was like simple, straight to the point, and again, it's all about like opening up experiences, trying new things, trying new wines, which resonated with us really well.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is, I always just love these stories because they usually have way more, let's say, I don't know, like sentiment versus strategy. Like,
Yeah, for sure. There
like
was
you
not too
said,
much strategy there.
right, which it always is just such a fascination to me, yet it becomes wildly successful. And I think it just sort of speaks to that whole idea that, it can be a small idea, like it's a base hit, right? It doesn't have to be this grand slam. It can be the base hit and look where it took you, right?
Yeah, of course.
So, since you are talking to a group of Greyhound students, how about take us back a little bit? What would you say, kind of a two-part question, what resonates the most in terms of what you learned from Loyola that's translating really well for you today? And then the second part of that would be, any kind of things that you look back on and you wish you did differently, or you wish you took advantage of, or you wish you experienced, or that type of thing, based on from Greyhound student now to Greyhound graduate.
Yeah. So probably the best part of Loyola, in my opinion, was just meeting the people that I met there. I've met some of my best friends and lifelong friends. But like what I learned the most and when I look back on is just really time management, and like how to prioritize. Like coming out of high school, like going into college is the first time that, you're actually free. You make your own decisions for the most part and for most students. And you have to kind of prioritize. It's like, what do you really care about? It's like, what classes should I take? Should I go to this class? Am I going to go out to, do this activity or like join this club? And you really start finding out like what matters to you, and like how to prioritize that. And then like time management is, yeah, it's pretty crucial, especially at a really young stage of the startup, because again, you're doing all facets of the business from sales and marketing to talking to VC funds and investors trying to raise capital to answering customer support tickets. So yeah, it's really everything there. And then what was your second question, Eileen?
So if you were to look back and look at your college self and something maybe on the campus you wish you took advantage of, or you wish you just dove into, or just like that 2020, what do you look back with 20, wish you had, thoughts on it now
Yeah.
based on them?
Yeah. Okay. I think like kind of like two things. One is that I wish I became more involved in different organizations. And like the reason behind that, is networking, because networking is extremely important, whether if you want to go the corporate career or become an entrepreneur. It's so important for connecting people, wanting to help out people. And that's where I feel like you really learn those skills is in, high school and college, within those different organizations. And then what I didn't do, and I sorely missed out on, is studying abroad, because Loyola has such a great study abroad program. I never did it, and I kind of looked at my time in Austin as my study abroad, so to say. Um,
That's really good advice. It's great. It's good to hear. And, I think no two Greyhounds have the same experience, but I do think it's good to hit the pause button and share with our students some things that, you know, they may want to take advantage of. We even now offer these smaller study abroad programs. I'm not sure if you're familiar. They're like a summer type thing. And it's like
oh, amazing.
it's like a quick hit immersion type thing. All right, speaking of study abroad, can you please share with our students where you are and maybe why you're there as well? I think it's all relevant.
Yeah. So I've been nomadic pretty much since last June, and I'm currently spending the month down in Costa Rica. Yeah.
You heard it right, Greyhounds. He's in Costa Rica. we are thoroughly enjoying the Jake McIntyre story, Costa Rica
Yes.
and all. So, Jake, if students wanted to reach out to you, and perhaps they're here with us tonight or they're on our YouTube recording, what is the best way that students could reach you? Are you a LinkedIn person? Would you like to share your email? What's your preferred strategy if you would be a resource? I know you're already on Loyola Connect, so a little plug to everyone that Jake is on Loyola Connect if you'd like to have him as an additional resource as you go about your process. And then how else could they reach you, please?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm always happy to help. It's great just brainstorming, asking questions. I do it all the time and try to connect with people. It's how I learn best. Best way to reach me is through LinkedIn. I know a couple of you have already. And I'm happy to set up time to connect and dive into any more questions that you guys have, whether it be my experience at Facebook or my experience starting WineKey or really any other questions. Happy to help out.
That is fantastic. Jake, we cannot thank you enough. We're so grateful for your time, for your energy as a Greyhound, for returning to our, virtual campus, so to speak, tonight to share your story and, to just let the Greyhounds know that the options are endless, Costa Rica and all. So
Yeah.
we truly extend our gratitude. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, amazing. And thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. And always excited to connect and happy to help with any hounds.
Great. Thank you.